You may want to sit down for this, because I'm afraid I have some bad news. So I was just reading about how the son of the guy that filmed this famous Bigfoot video finally admitted that his dad, Roger Patterson, did in fact hoax this video, and he actually saw his father burning the gorilla suit. Yeah, that's, shocking. But then, I somehow stumbled upon probably the most hilarious thing I have ever read in my life. Lorraine Warren telepathically communicated with a Bigfoot one time. The Warrens are just a bottomless well of entertainment. And it's been a while since we've roasted our two favorite grifters. So let's have another round of phenomenasons and see how much more we can increase their score. Currently, they're on 101 sins. That's 101 things that are either completely false or completely ridiculous. And they held the record for the most bullshit claims until I did a video about the Bell Witch. So let's see if we can help the Warrens regain their World Heavyweight Grifting Championship. I have a feeling that we're gonna see a new champ today. So we're gonna roast 3 stories today, but let's start off with this Bigfoot shit because, wow, this is probably the dumbest thing I've ever read in my life. The story starts out with Lorraine Warren saying, quote, "We had never paid much attention to the stories about Bigfoot. I wouldn't say that we dismissed them as fictitious, but Bigfoot didn't hold much interest for psychic investigators. That changed one spring when we were lecturing in Tennessee, and a reporter from the Elk Valley Times contacted us and told us about some hill people who kept insisting that something was threatening their children. Now, apparently, Ed and Lorraine, along with some college kids who were interested in the supernatural and a couple of hill people, went out into the wild brush surrounding the small encampment in rural Tennessee, because Bigfoot was supposedly spotted out there. Now, Lorraine says in this book that this experience was absolutely fucking awful for her. Being out in nature. She didn't like that. Fuck trees. However, seeing, quote, poverty this raw, and basically seeing a group of people who had it so rough and spoke with a dialect that reflected their lack of education, Lorraine began to feel a great compassion for these people, and she wished that there was something that she could do for them. Which then made her depressed because she realized that there was nothing she could do for them. Except, I suppose, write a chapter about them in her book. Anyways, the book goes on to say that perhaps it was her guilt that encouraged her to spend all day with them looking for Bigfoot, even though she didn't necessarily believe these people. Welcome to the club, Lorraine. Now you know how we feel. But you know, the Warrens, always looking for something stupid to add into one of their books, went around interviewing everybody at the small encampment there with a tape recorder. And I suppose that we'll never get to hear these audio recordings for ourselves, and we'll just have to trust what the Warrens tell us. But apparently, and I'm gonna have to use that word repeatedly again today, but apparently, one woman there told a particularly frightening story of the creature sneaking behind a tree and reaching out and trying to touch her 2-year-old's hand. Now firstly, this is quite hard to believe for a number of reasons, but mostly that it's so out of character for Bigfoot, who is often reported to be so stealthy that no one has ever actually seen one. Secondly, this conveniently happened the day before the Warrens arrived. The reason this is suspicious will be apparent soon. So the woman then says that she saw this hand reaching out, she screamed, and she ran back to camp. All the men and boys at the encampment then arm themselves, and they run off into the brush to give Bigfoot a big beating. So apparently that's the reason that Lorraine went out for a hike that day. According to the Warrens' book, around 4:30 that afternoon, Lorraine first became aware of a disturbing presence in the area. Now, what was this disturbing presence? Well, the group had just finished walking through a clearing where the tall grass was mysteriously beaten down, as if something very heavy had rolled over it again and again. Something very heavy like a bear, perhaps? Of course not. Now, standing at a tree, taking a break from 2 solid hours of hiking, Lorraine's mind suddenly offered her a picture of a curious creature. He did in fact appear to be a fusion of man and ape, a tall, sloped-shouldered animal with very long arms that were covered with almost shaggy hair. His face was flat, with a protruding bony shelf above the eyes. 2 things about him were especially disturbing. First, his eyes, which shone with intelligence, compassion, and fear. Second, his ability to project images telepathically into Lorraine's mind. The book says, quote, "No so-called dumb animal is able to accomplish such projections." No animal is able to accomplish such projections. Stop talking bullshit. Lorraine knew instantly that she was dealing here with a creature who, despite his fearsome and ugly appearance, was not the prehistoric beast most people assumed him to be. The image then changed. She saw rocky caves above the smashing black water of a furious river. At the edge of the cave stood this creature, and behind him, other similar creatures. The ape man looked out sadly at the vast water. She sensed he was trapped and felt isolated.
Oh no! Anyway.
Once again, the image changed. Lorraine knew that this was the creature showing himself to her as he was then, just 40 or 50 yards away in the deep brush in the forest. Bigfoot was hurt. His hairy, splayed foot scabbed with still seeping blood. During his travels that day, old Bigfoot had somehow injured his foot. I wish Lorraine would have tried to explain how, because I'm sure it would have been fucking hilarious. But she doesn't. Bigfoot then projected great fear to Lorraine and told her telepathically, I suppose, that he was afraid that his injury would keep him from returning to his secret cave. He wanted to see his mate again, and his children, but he sensed that the humans with Lorraine would seize him and kill him. Don't worry, Bigfoot, that has never happened before. This stupid book goes on to say, quote, "Now they began to communicate mind to mind. Lorraine explained quickly that he had terrified the settlement when he attempted to reach out and touch the human child." The creature shook his head, saying he had only been trying to communicate with the young child. Youngsters don't have the prejudices of adults, and so he felt that he could perhaps explain himself to the child, just as he was explaining himself to Lorraine. What the fuck is happening here? First you want to say that no dumb animal can project images. Well then why the fuck does this intelligent animal think that he can explain himself to a 2-year-old kid? And this is in an area, by the way, that Lorraine herself said was poverty-stricken, and the people there spoke with a dialect that reflected their lack of education. What the fuck is the kid gonna understand? This book then says that Lorraine was determined to go into the brush and find the creature. But as she moved, the others in the group came over to her and started talking. She then told them all to shut the fuck up because she was trying to make herself physically sensitive to the environment. And then she slipped away from them and pushed herself through the shoulder-high undergrowth. She then began to smell an almost acrid odor, which Lorraine just knew was the creature's. She then started projecting images to Bigfoot of her examining his foot, helping him bind and mend the injury. And then Bigfoot projected images back to Lorraine of himself standing on the ledge of a cliff with a hawk standing on his wrist. This book, by the way, was sold as non-fiction. Anyway, I can only assume that once Lorraine got this image of Bigfoot standing on the ledge of a cliff with a hawk on his wrist, she was like, wow, this dude is fucking cool. Because she then said to Bigfoot, "I am coming to you. I will help you. I will be your friend." And as Lorraine got closer and closer and felt Bigfoot's fear easing, and she was just about to make contact and prove to the world that these big fuckers are real, some stupid fucking idiot conveniently blew a horn that he took on this hike for no apparent reason and scared Bigfoot. This dude is so fucking cool, he can stand on the ledge of a cliff with a hawk on his wrist, but horns are scary. The images that Bigfoot started projecting back to Lorraine became violent, and she saw him running back to his cave. So I suppose that the injury to his foot wasn't actually that bad if he could still run away. But according to Lorraine, his foot was bleeding more than ever now. Well, that's sad and all, and I feel really bad for Bigfoot, but what you are really saying is that there is now DNA evidence there of Bigfoot. Actual DNA evidence that can not only support your story, but also prove to the world that there is an undiscovered species out there. So what will Lorraine do with this DNA? Fuck all. So anyway, Lorraine goes back to the group and she makes it clear that this kid pissed her off. How dare you blow a horn when I'm about to meet Bigfoot, when I never told you that I was just about to meet Bigfoot? What a moron. So Lorraine then says, fuck all of you people, I'm gonna go explore alone. Quote, proof that the creature had been there was easily seen. Blood of a type both redder and more viscous than human blood, tainted leaves and grass and foliage. She followed the blood all the way to the edge of a cliff, but Bigfoot was gone. Firstly, I hope you're not suggesting that he jumped off the cliff. Secondly, and I'm going to repeat this point because it bears repeating, according to the Warrens, they found actual DNA evidence of Bigfoot, but did not call in anybody to study the samples or wipe some of that shit onto a hanky and take it to a scientist. They did absolutely nothing with the evidence. Out of all the claims that they have ever made, I think that this one might just be the worst. This is fucking ridiculous. But also, let's just think about what was said here. Lorraine says, oh, Bigfoot just wants to talk with 2-year-olds to be more understood. Poor Bigfoot's just hiding because he's scared the adults are gonna kill him. He then shows her an image of him standing on the edge of a cliff with a hawk on his wrist. Wow, Bigfoot is so fucking cool, he must be such a chill dude. And then a kid blows a horn, and Bigfoot is suddenly sending violent images. How the fuck is that an intelligent creature? If Bigfoot was intelligent and understanding, Lorraine could have just told him, ignore the kid, he doesn't know you're out here. Instead, this guy just fucking snaps. What if he actually managed to grab a hold of that 2-year-old? Not that I believe this happened, this is hypothetical. But what if he managed to grab a hold of the 2-year-old, and then somebody at the encampment made a loud noise? What would Bigfoot have done then? Would he have destroyed the kid, or would he have been understanding? Who knows? But this is all a bunch of fucking bullshit anyway, so let's just wrap this up. The book then goes on to quote Ed Warren, who says they are called tulpas, physical manifestations that are in fact projections of the mind. Now Ed, I think that you were partially correct. This idea of these things being projections of the mind sounds a little bit more accurate. But Ed basically goes on to say that these are creatures that are conjured by black magic, which is practiced throughout the world, but most notably in Tibet. Ed says, quote, it is my belief that Bigfoot is a tulpa, a mind projection. So is the Loch Ness Monster, and many other now you see it, now you don't creatures that get reported to the press. Sure, whatever. Now if you're interested, the best way to learn about tulpas is through the fictional TV show Supernatural. And that's because tulpas are fictional and the lore is completely irrelevant. But just for shits and giggles, in the season 1 episode called Hell House, Sam and Dean Winchester fight a tulpa that was summoned by the Blue Oyster Cult logo and a bunch of other shit that's spray painted on the wall. Anyway, Ed says that people imagine these creatures and then conjure them up through black magic and then we see them. This could also account for UFOs. Ed, where the fuck do you find the time to think this shit up?
It's just, Ed doesn't have too many friends.
Now, Ed's theory could actually be refined to this. People imagine these creatures, and then other people say that they saw them. And that's pretty much it. And I don't really know what else to say about this story, except that this audiobook cost me $15. So you know what? Fair's fair. Here's 15 sins. Thanks for wasting my money. Now, since we're talking about silly monsters, I reckon we should check out the Warrens' book, Werewolf.
He's seen the transfiguration of a man into a wolf.
It started from behind him, and the muscles in the back of the neck all began to enlarge, and the ears began to point, and he howled.
Like I told Lorraine, I said, Lorraine, I'm not going to go before the public and start talking about a werewolf. I said, it's going to be interesting to go there, see what we can do to help this man, but that's about it.
He felt that that was just stretching our credibility just a little too far to believe in werewolves. But I believe.
Well, Lorraine, you might want to sit down, because I'm afraid I have some bad news.
You just lost all of your cred, dude. That's right. That's what you should do right now.
Now, this book is based on the supposed true story of William Bill Ramsey, who became otherwise known as the Southend Werewolf. Now, I just want to let you know that this story is an absolute fuck-up in terms of when what happened. But hey, It wouldn't be a Warren story without that. Now, apparently this werewolf story is quite important to the Warrens, and it's actually one of the very few of their investigations that are presented in an article on their official website. I mean, they've only got 10, despite the fact that they claimed to have documented thousands of cases of the paranormal. So if this is the cream of the crop,
I am the cream.
the paranormal is in some serious trouble. But this werewolf shit was so important to the Warrens that apparently there were even discussions about making a Conjuring movie about the story, or just having a werewolf villain in one of them. Alright, so let's see how seriously the Warrens took the story in their official write-up on their official website. Quote,
You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Real Ramsey. The first letter in this write-up is a typo of the name of the most important person in this story. Let this set the tone for how much the Warrens gave a shit about this werewolf. Clearly not as much as they cared about Bigfoot. What a shitload of fuck. So anyway, William Roll Ramsey was born and raised in Essex, the seaside town of Southend in the UK. His childhood would seem mostly normal, except for an incident when he was just 9 years old. Now try and take a guess at what this life-altering incident was. Do you think that Roll was bitten by a werewolf?
No. Why would you think?
Did he get bitten by a regular wolf?
No. Why would you think?
Did he get bitten by a little pug?
No. Why would you think?
It's because he began to feel strange.
It's because that's why.
Oh no, not strange. The Warrens article goes on to say, quote, It was deep into one Saturday afternoon in 1952 when an icy blast of frigid cold swept all over him. Perspiration froze on his skin and a foul stench came close to making him vomit. Well, that just sounds like the after effects of Taco Bell to me. But apparently this was some diabolical Taco Bell because, quote, the confused young Ramsey only had two things on his mind. Running away to a life on the beach and wolves. I have no idea where they got this life on the beach shit, but since I'm quite familiar now with how unreliable the Warrens' write-ups are, I looked around for other sources where the story was being told by the actual people involved. Now I could only find 3, maybe there's others, I don't really know, but those sources were an episode from the show True or False from 1990, an episode of the show Sightings from 1992, and an episode of Jane Goldman Investigates from 2004. And all of these tell a slightly different story to the Warrens. For example, in Sightings, Rill himself talks about this incident when he was 9 years old and says, quote, It was a warm summer's evening. So where the fuck the Warrens heard afternoon, I don't know. Maybe Bigfoot told Lorraine that. But Rill also mentions in Sightings that after smelling Taco Bell, he immediately went into a rage. Rill doesn't say shit about going into a trance and thinking about wolves on the beach or whatever. So I don't know, maybe Sightings cut that out because that's kinda derpy. I don't know. But this is just very typical shit for the Warrens. Just making shit up. Anyways, let's get back to the world's most famous demonologist's write-up. Quote, When he heard the distant calls of his mother, he snapped out of his trance. However, Ramsey was changed. Intense and pure rage had installed itself firmly within his psyche. Using this and the adrenaline-fueled strength he now possessed, Rill uprooted a fence post, with the fence still attached, and was swinging it like a club. Now, as is of course tradition, the size of this fence is not specified, nor are there any photos of this particular type of fence, so I'm not really sure if I should be impressed. But hey, if it was one of these sort of typical British garden fences, then sorry, Rill. You're gonna have to do a little bit better than that to impress me. However, according to Rill on Sightings, the fence post was like 2 or 3 inches square and set into concrete. He says he pulled it out of the ground and then smashed it until it broke. Unfortunately, I'm still quite confused by this description. Was it a short fence? Was it a tall fence? Did he pull it out the concrete like Excalibur? Or did he take the concrete with it? Fuck knows. So I'm still not sure if I should be impressed by this. And all that needed to be done to clear this confusion was to provide a photo of the type of fence post it was. But apparently, that was too fucking difficult for anybody to do. Anyway, the Warrens write-up goes on to say, quote, Not even his parents could easily remove the post with their bare hands. So what are you saying here? Are you saying that they were so impressed by this that they tried to do this themselves? Instead of, getting the belt and giving this kid a beat. Probably gonna have to censor that before YouTube removes this video. But I do have a genuine question about this fence post thing. It's not really that unbelievable, so we'll give this one to Rill. But how do we know that this fence post wasn't already loose? How do we know, for example, that Rill didn't play out in the garden every day and kick like a soccer ball into that fence post over and over? We don't even know how tall this fence post was. So all I'm really saying here is, what a bunch of nothing. Back to the Warrens' write-up. Quote, what the young child did next made both of his parents flee back into the relative safety of their home, leaving Rill isolated outside. Rill Ramsey then placed the wire meshing into his mouth and began gnawing at it. Amazing! You don't really need to be a werewolf, though, to do that. You know that there are people in the circus who literally eat fucking glass. Are they werewolves as well? What a bunch of fucking nothing. The cold sensations then returned, and a low growl emanated from deep within him. Both his parents remained inside the house until it was apparent that their son had calmed down considerably. Amazing. Then apparently Rill's werewolf powers would become dormant, and he didn't uproot any fence posts for another 15 years. Rill then grew up, he got married, and became a father of 3. Now, according to I have no idea who, the first 2 years of Rill's marriage was plagued by nightmares. Oh no, not nightmares. But apparently every dream was the same. It would begin with Rill walking behind his wife, who would then turn around to look at him, and then she would start running away in terror. That is very scary. Then, just like his werewolf powers, Rill's nightmares would too become dormant without any exorcisms or divine intervention. Just poof, gone. But then, according to the Warrens, 18 months later, Rill woke up in the middle of the night and could hear what he thought was the panting of a wild animal somewhere inside the bedroom. Quote, he was correct. It was Rill himself.
Sorry, children.
Now, after this bunch of fucking nothing, his werewolf powers would once again become dormant for another 15 years. So I think at this point we are now allowed to say that being a werewolf sounds really fucking boring.
On all levels except physical, I am a wolf.
All that Rill has done so far is gotten cold, smelled Taco Bell, thought of wolves on the beach, gotten angry at a fence post, uprooted that fence post, smashed it until he killed it, chewed on a piece of metal, had a couple of nightmares, and woke up breathing heavily. Life could have been a lot worse. He could have been out in rural Tennessee, getting destroyed by a Bigfoot. Getting cold and having a couple of nightmares doesn't really sound that bad anymore, does it? But anyway, according to the Warrens, something would finally happen in 1983. Thank God. But apparently, on an unspecified date in 1983, Rill went out with some unnamed friends to an unspecified local pub. Because what good are details in a paranormal investigation anyway? So let's just imagine the pub to be the Winchester. Now, according to the Warrens, after a couple of drinks, Rill began to feel that familiar icy chill that he felt only once in his life, by the way, when he thought of wolves on the beach and killed a fence post. But he felt that familiar icy chill again, so he went up to his mates and he asked,
Can I get any of you cunts a drink?
They all said no,
Anybody?
and then Rill politely excused himself to go to the bathroom. According to the Warrens again, Rill looked in the mirror and, quote, saw a wolf looking back at him. But nobody else saw this. Are you really going to try and tell us that this man only transformed into a werewolf once he was alone in the bathroom? What's the excuse for him not leaving the bathroom and attacking somebody then? Was Rill in full control of his werewolf form this time? Because Rill himself has mentioned in interviews that he would black out during these attacks and not remember anything. So do you see how you've cornered yourself here by making a very, very stupid claim? If Rill was in full control, which would explain why he didn't attack anybody, why didn't he leave the bathroom, go back to his mates and say, Oi mates, check this shit out, yeah? I'm a fucking wolf, bruv. So naturally, the next question that must be asked is, did Rill even have any mates? Probably. But in the show True or False, Rill says that his problems first began in 1981. So that would be 2 years before he turned into a wolf at the Winchester. And in True or False, Rill says, quote, "Coming back from Billericay in the works van, couple of chaps and myself sitting in the back, and suddenly I started to snarl and growl at him, even tried to bite one of them. They thought I was mucking about." Well, let me ask you this, Ed and Lorraine. How the fuck do you think somebody is mucking about when they literally transform into a fucking werewolf in front of you?
He's seeing the transfiguration of a man into a wolf.
What a bunch of fucking bullshit. So Rill goes on to say, "I didn't really know what was happening to me. I just made out that I had been." Rill then says nothing else happened for a couple of years until one day in December 1983, I suddenly started getting chest pains. He then says that he checked himself into the hospital and then bit a nurse. So Rill doesn't mention this wolf transformation shit in the mirror, so this entire shit at the Winchester is just a blatant embellishment by the Warrens. This did not fucking happen. But according to the Warrens, this wolf transformation shit was just a precursor as to what was going to happen on their way home. In the car ride home, and without any warning, Rill began to growl and immediately turned to his fellow passenger. So what are you saying now? This person wasn't one of his mates from the pub who could, come out and say, "Yeah, I saw me mate Rill transform into a fucking werewolf, bruv." This guy was just some unnamed passenger. Fair enough. Anyway, both hands twisted into claws, and Ramsey tried to bite the leg of his friend. So now it is his friend. So why have none of them come forward to say, "Yeah, me mate turned into a fucking werewolf"? I'll tell you why. Because Rill Ramsey did not turn into a werewolf.
It's because that's why.
Now the Warrens write-up goes on to say, quote, "The unnamed designated driver didn't panic." The driver didn't panic. A man is supposedly turning into a werewolf in the back of his car, and he didn't panic.
Christ, what the hell do you think you're doing?
Chill out, everyone's alright.
Stop telling me to chill out! And no, for your information, everybody is not alright.
Just another fucking day in Essex, I suppose. He brought the car to a stop and made attempts to get the raging Rill out the back of the car. It took several minutes and quite a bit of effort to finally get Rill out of the car. Now firstly, in True or False, Rill himself describes this particular vehicle as a van. A van and a car are a little bit different. Now I will admit that that's not a big fucking deal, but this just makes it clear that the Warrens just make up a bunch of details. They don't even know what the full story is, and they just say whatever the fuck they want. Which is made even more baffling by the fact that they say that they wrote their book with Rill Ramsey. Here's his name on the cover of the book. So why the fuck are these details different? Secondly, in True or False, Rill says that his colleagues thought that he was mucking about. There isn't any mention of him being pulled out the van. Now fair enough, this could have been cut out of the episode. But why? Why would that have been omitted from the episode? Thirdly, the Warrens would like us to believe that this is a group of people who were just having a couple of drinks at the Winchester, and then they supposedly pull a werewolf out the back of their car in just several minutes. Several minutes! Remember that for when we get to the 4-hour standoff with 8 terrified police officers. According to the Warrens, after they pulled Rill out of the car, the frenzy had dissipated. There's no mention of what they did with Rill after they pulled him out of the car. Did they make him walk home, or did they invite the werewolf back in? I suppose I'll never know, because I'm not going to buy their book Werewolf. I bought 2 of their books already, and I'm not buying a 3rd one. So I'm just going to use the write-up on their website, because it doesn't really matter anyway. Everything the Warrens say is either wrong or a lie. And just to prove how full of shit they were, at this particular point in this write-up, while talking about this 1983 car ride incident, the 1981 van incident, they add an image here of a Sun newspaper article which seemingly supports this bullshit story of Rill Ramsey turning into a werewolf in 1983. However, when you take a closer look, you will see that this newspaper article was published in 1987, and not even about the same incident. This has nothing to do with the car ride. But hey, the Warrens have finally shared something that somewhat supports their claims. This is progress. Unfortunately, progressing backwards. Because how, in the Blue Oyster Cult, is anyone supposed to be able to read this fucking newspaper? I've even tried reverse searching this newspaper. I cannot find one that you can read clearly. But since this is where they've included this newspaper article, let's see what we can decipher from these ancient texts. All I can read is that a crazed werewolf with amazing strength was seized yesterday after fighting a 4-hour battle with 8 terrified police. During the struggle, the wolfman snarled and howled with lips curled back, crouched on all fours, and I think it says foamed at the mouth, and leapt at police with his hands and fingers or some shit in the shape of a claw. I can't really make out much more than that, but I did find this link when I reverse searched it. TheSun.com, the story behind the cheekiest headlines. And all they said about this article is, quote, "Many of the best headlines aren't puns, but simply tell an extraordinary story straight. A super strong Essex man was held after a 4-hour battle with 8 police in which he howled on all fours, foamed at the mouth, and rammed his head through a wooden door." Wow. Big deal. Here's an example of a normal man devoid of werewolf powers dealing with a door. So, sorry, Rill. You're gonna have to do a little bit better than that to impress me. Like, turning into a werewolf on camera. That would be impressive. Anyway, what else can we read here? Not much, except the policemen who fought him were hurled through the air time and time again. Not really sure what all of this shit here says. But at the bottom here, it says that last night, the werewolf, a 43-year-old married builder from Southend, was in a mental hospital. As far as I can tell, this is actually correct. Bill Ramsey was actually repeatedly committed to Runwell Mental Hospital. But according to pretty much all the sources, they could just never figure out what was actually wrong with him. However, in the Jane Goldman investigation, a parapsychologist named Kieran O'Keefe makes a good case for what may have been affecting Rill, and his theory is temporal lobe epilepsy.
My take on it is that we're seeing the classic symptoms of a temporal lobe epilepsy. At various points, Bill talks about a tightening of the chest, around the heart, and just a general sort of muscular pain. In addition, he talks about a strange smell, like he starts to experience a strange smell. And these are all what are called prodromes of epilepsy. They're warnings of an oncoming epileptic fit. Witness reports have said that he becomes very aggressive, there's gnarling of the teeth, there's a definite change in behavior and mood. And these are again symptoms of temporal lobe epilepsy, even the gnarling of the teeth, which may explain the nickname of werewolf.
However, I don't understand what the fuck that has to do with the 1983 car ride incident. Oh, I'm sorry, the 1981 van incident. And you know, when you sell books like this as non-fiction, and all you provide is a blurry, illegible newspaper article of something completely different 4 years after the thing that you're actually talking about, instead of, providing actual photos and videos, which the Warrens claim to have, by the way, then I'm sorry, Ed and Lorraine. We just have to say it now how it is. Ed and Lorraine Warren were full of shit. This is unacceptable.
I've stood around, I've listened to everything you had to say. Yep. You got me mad now.
Let's just calm down again, eh? Let's get back to the Warrens' case file now. So they've just told us a big fucking lie about this 1983 car ride incident, and then they say, quote, "Worse was to come, but not for another 18 months. Then shortly before Christmas 1983, Rill begins to suffer from chest pains, and thoughts immediately turned to a possible heart attack. Rill then checks himself into the emergency room of the local hospital, and was halfway through a blood pressure examination when he sank his fucking teeth into the arms of a nurse and ran through the ward as a man possessed. My bro, can we do more than 3 sentences without a fuck up here? I have to assume at this point that this article was written by Tony Spira, the Warrens' son-in-law, because this looks like his work. Fucking sloppy. But it doesn't have his name at the bottom of the write-up, so I don't know. But the website is in Tony Spira's name now, tonyspira.com. So surely, Tony, you can come back and fix some of these mistakes. In case you missed it, the Warrens' write-up said that Rill turned into a wolf at the pub and tried to bite the leg of his fellow passenger in 1983. And then, apparently, nothing else would happen for another 18 months when, shortly before Christmas 1983, Rill thinks he's having a heart attack and goes and bites a fucking nurse. Well, assuming that the car thing happened in January, what fucking year is 18 months long? And you know, honestly, the problem that I have with all of this is not the fact that this could have been a mistake. I understand that people make mistakes, I understand nobody's perfect, that's fine. But the Warrens' case files are riddled with this kind of shit. If you read the article on their website about how they met, you'll notice the same shit happening there. They can't even get their own story straight, yet they expect us to trust them when they're talking about a fucking werewolf. The thing is, if you couldn't be bothered to be accurate with the small details in any of the stories you tell, how the fuck can we trust that you were accurate with anything? Anyways, according to the Warrens' write-up again, witnesses would later reveal that Rill had hunched shoulders and both hands had curled into talons or claws, and he was baring his lips just like a rabid animal. Anyone that dared to approach was knocked down easily with almost superhuman strength. It took quite a few people, working as a team, to finally subdue the rampaging man. Amazing, so this time at the hospital, Rill didn't turn into a werewolf. So what was that shit in the mirror then? Was that just some fucking telepathic projection from Bigfoot? Or was it maybe all in Ed Warren's imagination? Apparently, a police officer managed to place handcuffs around Ramsey's wrist, but still, this was not sufficient. A tranquilizer finally put an end to the outburst, and the following morning, this tranquilizer had worn off, and so did the original transformation. Wait, what? Are you saying that he did turn into a werewolf at the hospital then? So then why, in the blue hell, didn't anyone take a photo of that? This happened in a fucking hospital. You don't think anybody thought, wow, that's fucking weird, a dude turned into a werewolf. Maybe we should study that. Quickly, grab a clump of his fucking hair. Draw some blood. Something. No, they all did nothing. No one did anything. Except place some fucking handcuffs around his wrists. Anyways, Rill says that after he bit the nurse, he was taken to Runwell Mental Hospital. So this is two separate hospitals that he went to, where, if you believe the Warrens, he was in werewolf form.
He's seen the transfiguration of a man into a wolf.
And no one took a photo. No one drew blood. No one took some hair samples. No one even made a fucking drawing of the werewolf. Is this not one of the most ridiculous things you've ever heard in your life? Bigfoot was bad, but maybe this is on par. Nah, Bigfoot was worse. Anyways, back to the Warren story again. So, after this shit happened at the hospital where he bit the nurse, one of the doctors apparently say, let's keep him under observation. For some reason, they don't mention that he went to Runwell Mental Hospital and stayed there for 28 days. I assume it's because they told Rill this.
Warren's told me that it wasn't a mental illness. I had no mental illness. I was possessed. Demonically possessed with a wolf spirit. Oh, God. Oh, I've heard it all.
Couldn't agree more, Rill. They then, however, say next in the write-up that 2 months later, in January 1984, Rill is back at the hospital. This time, he attacked a nurse and lunged at an orderly. And for some reason, 4 police officers just happened to stroll through the hospital at just the right time, see what's happening, and surround Rill. The 4 cops then, in an unspecified amount of time, managed to subdue Rill. Was it several minutes this time, or was it several hours? Who knows, but they say, quote, one of the 4 police officers suffered wounds so severe that he ended up in the hospital for another 4 days. Now I hope that's not supposed to be proof that this guy turned into a werewolf, because people have done far worse things to other people than just putting them in the hospital. But anyways, the Warrens say that Rill is then taken to the police station, and this is when they bring out a police surgeon. There is no more information regarding the police surgeon in their write-up. Because of course there isn't. It's about here that I concluded that the Warrens were basically retelling a story that they heard somewhere else and just got all the information wrong. Because neither sightings nor true or false mention this 1984 hospital story. And the police surgeon was only called once Rill was arrested in 1987. So it really makes you wonder how the Warrens got so much wrong when apparently Rill Ramsey helped them write the book. I wouldn't even be surprised at this point if the details in the book were different to this write-up. But that begs the question, why are they different? But if they are the same as this write-up, how the fuck did they get so much wrong? How the fuck did this happen? Why is the story such a disaster? Anyways, here's more proof that the Warrens are full of shit. They say in their write-up that Rill considered checking himself into a mental hospital, but then decided fuck it. He didn't want people to think he was weird or something. Well,
I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
This is Rumwell Mental Hospital in Wickford, where the police brought me after a number of attacks. On one occasion, I was detained here for 28 days to see if they could run tests and try and get to the bottom of some mental condition I might have, but nothing seemed to tally with my symptoms in any way, so I think they finished up just as baffled and confused as I was, and we really got no further.
By this time, the attacks were getting much worse, and they were getting far more frequent. So once I got to recognise the symptoms of an attack, I thought the best thing was to take myself down to the police station and get them to lock me up for a couple of hours. It's that way the satisfaction of knowing I wasn't going to harm any member of the public.
So that was a fucking lie.
You know, I can only assume the reason why the Warrens are purposely omitting the mental hospital thing, or dancing around it like it's inconsequential. They don't want you to know that. They want you to think that this was demonic possession. They want you to think that this man actually transformed into a werewolf. But this demon that was possessing Rill was clearly very pathetic, because after this incident, apparently, Rill's werewolf powers once again became dormant until July 1987, when William Rill Ramsey made a citizen's arrest. Now, according to a YouTube channel called The Tape Library, after a couple of drinks at the White Horse pub, Rill was driving a van that he borrowed from work slowly down the road, until he came across a prostitute named Lorraine. He then rolled down the window, asked her if she wanted to go for a ride, and despite how uncomfortable Lorraine felt, she got in the van. Now, apparently, he didn't say a fucking word to this woman while they were in the van together. And according to the Tape Library, and it seems that he got his information from the Warrens' book Werewolf, and not just on their website like me, since I'm being cheap and refusing to waste another $15 on anything the Warrens vomited up, but according to the Tape Library, the book makes it seem like Rill made this conscious decision at the pub that night to go out and arrest a prostitute for some reason. However, the way things are described, it seems like Rill made a snap decision and he didn't understand why he picked her up, even suggesting that he may have wanted to take her somewhere safe because he felt the urge to harm her. Well, here's an idea. Don't ask her to come for a ride with you then. Just drive past her and go home to your wife. How's that for a slice of fried gold?
Yeah, boy! Because he's seen something that very few people ever see. He's seen the transfiguration of a man into...
You believe everything you hear on TV?
But as the story goes, Rill drove this prostitute straight to the police station. And when they parked at the police station, Lauren got out of the car and she made a run for it. Lauren made a run for it into the police station. According to the police, Lauren was so shaken up by this experience that she ran into the police station and told them that guy out there that drove me here is fucking weird. So then a cop named Terry Fisher goes out to talk to Rill, and how about we just let Terry tell you what happened himself?
He had these mad, staring eyes and this maniacal expression. That's all I could describe it as. But the worst thing was what he was saying, and it was said in a very malevolent way. And I'll quote from the report I made shortly afterwards. He was saying, "The devil is in me. When the devil is in me, I am strong. I'm going to kill you. I am strong, and you are going to die."
Ramsey lunged for the sergeant's throat. Fisher, unarmed, responded with a powerful knee to the groin.
He sort of went, "Oh," and crouched down, and he worked it off again and became stronger.
And when I came out into the yard, I saw Terry Fisher on the floor, just over in this location, with Bill Ramsey sitting on top of him with his hands around his throat.
Then there were bobbies that came to their sergeant's aid, and he threw them off, in their words, like they were matchsticks.
And when you see the size of this ex-police officer, you'll say to yourself, what scared him so much? Why this one experience? Because he's seen something that very few people ever see.
He's seen the transfiguration of a man into a wolf.
Now you may be shocked to hear this, but not a single police officer ever says anything that could be misinterpreted in any way as meaning they saw Rill transform into a werewolf.
Ramsey was actually placed in the cell and he was no trouble for approximately 5 to 10 minutes. Then he started to make banging noises. Officers came to see what the problem was. It was then discovered that Ramsey had actually got his head plus his arm and shoulder through this aperture and was striking out at the officers. What in actual fact he'd done, his hands were formed in the shape of a claw, and every time somebody came anywhere near the cell door, he would make a lunge at them. And at this time, he was also curling his lips and growling.
What I actually saw that night, I couldn't really understand what it was. All I knew that it was something I'd never witnessed before. It was not natural behaviour.
The way people talk about it now is about in terms of kind of superhuman strength. Was that your experience of it?
It was certainly unnatural strength.
Now before I play any more clips of sightings, I think it's funnier to read what the Warrens say happened next in their write-up. Quote, Ramsey was so wild that it took a dozen policemen to hold him down and 2 injections to finally restrain him. So the Warrens say a dozen, so 12 police officers had to go out and save Terry. Well, let's hear from Tony Belford himself now. How many cops had to go out to save Terry?
I called for further assistance and it took about 5 or 6 officers to restrain Ramsey and to get him under control.
Now, according to sightings, after this whole shit happened at the police station, Rill was committed again to Runwell Mental Hospital. And like Rill says in True or False, none of the doctors could really figure out what exactly was causing this extreme aggression. But there was a theory that alcohol may have been involved. So I'd like to point out that the time that he growled in the back of the van and the time that he arrested the prostitute, Rill had been spending a bit of time at the pub. However, Rill also mentions that some incidents occurred while he'd been nowhere near alcohol. Now, I'm not really sure what those incidents were, but I guess we'll just have to take Rill's word for it. So anyway, it's around about this time now that the Warrens find out about this werewolf.
As a result of the publicity in the national press, I was asked to make a short film for American television. And it's a result of this that some psychic researchers or Ghostbusters, Ed and Lorraine Warren, contacted me from America and said they thought that I was a classic case of demonic possession. Well, I didn't know what to make of that, but
as a result of the publicity in the national press.
So I assume that they realized right then and there, they probably figured, hey, we could use this to make a quick buck. So Lorraine goes and gets in contact with the Southend-on-Sea police station, and she eventually weasels her way into a meeting with the Ramseys. According to the podcast Monster Talk, Ed and Lorraine then arranged for Ramsey to fly to the US for an exorcism in 1989, with the plane ticket paid for by the British tabloid in exchange for story rights.
I said, it's going to be interesting to go there, see what we can do to help this man, but that's about it.
Wow! It's really nice to know that these 2 saints were willing to help Rill with his crippling lycanthropy by generously offering other people's money to pay for his flight in exchange to profit off of his apparent psychological disorder. Now, if you think I'm being a dick for saying that, the Warrens' case file says, quote, the night before the exorcism was due to take place, Ramsey tried to strangle his wife while she slept. My bro? That's not normal. And it's also not mentioned in True or False or Sightings, by the way. Anyways, here's the last piece of the Warrens' write-up. Quote, When the exorcism actually began, Rill was not at all impressed. The service was being conducted in Latin, and for half an hour, nothing happened. All of a sudden then, Rill took on an entirely different appearance. His face contorted, and both hands formed claws. Bishop Robert McKenna commanded the demon to leave. The full force of werewolf fury descended on McKenna one time, and then disappeared for good. The whole event was recorded on film. Really? The whole thing? So, where the fuck is it?
Rare still photos are the only visual record of the exorcism.
So that was a fucking lie.
Is this all you're gonna show us? This one photo of fucking nothing. An old man just whimpering in his seat. You gotta be fucking joking. What a bunch of fucking bullshit. You know that literally no one has come forward to corroborate Ed and Lorraine's claims that this man transformed into a werewolf. Which is what this entire book depends on.
Press asked me all sorts of questions. They asked if the moon had anything to do with the attacks, and I told them, of course, it didn't. They said, did I turn hairy or grow big teeth during the attacks? And again, I said, no, of course not. Then they asked me about lycanthropy. I told them I'd already explored this avenue through medical books, and it simply described it as a mythical disease where a man turns into a wolf, and well, that didn't seem to suit my symptoms anyway, so even after telling them all this, the press just wrote what they were going to anyway, and it still implied I was a werewolf at the end of it all.
Yeah, I could have just put this clip in the beginning, but I think it's a bit more fun to just rip the Warren stories apart.
The muscles in the back of the neck all began to enlarge, and the ears began to point, and he howled.
What a bunch of fucking bullshit.
It's a lot of overblown nonsense, a lot of drug nuts running wild.
Anyway, it's a happy ending for everybody. The evil wolf spirit was banished back to hell. Rill never transformed into a werewolf again, or ever, and seems like he just returned to a normal life. Good for him. But the ending for the Warrens is not as happy, because we got one more story to destroy.
Or do vampires really exist? Tonight, we're going to answer that question. Are there such a thing as vampires, and can you tell me an example of one?
Positively. Vampires do exist, what we call human vampires. At the time, it made quite a hullabaloo in the newspapers. And people wondered, was this a vampire? Well, it was a vampire, but the man was not dead when he was put into that coffin. He was a sorcerer, a black magician. He had put himself into a catatonic state, still alive, just barely. Friends of his had him buried, but at night he would leave that coffin with the astral body. This man would leave during the psychic hours, 9 to 6, and he would go in search of blood, but he would not bite into anybody's neck. He could take the blood through what we call teleportation, apports. Now today, of course,
Believe everything you hear on TV?
ways that some of the blood